Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and today I'm speaking with founder of the Food Forest Design Network, Travis Holzem. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Please take a second to help me grow the show so that I can keep delivering these conversations week after week for years to come. Subscribe, rate, and review the show in whatever podcasting app you're using right now, and check out the show notes to follow me on social media and YouTube as well. When you share your favorite episodes, tag me and use the hashtag GoingInBlind. You can also join my mailing list at zachtidwell.net. And if you know someone you think I should talk to, have them send me an email at contact.goinginblind@gmail.com. All right, Travis, we are live. Thank you for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been really excited for this one. I think I reached out to you before I had even recorded my first episode, or if not, it was right after recording it. I think this will be episode 14 or 15. So we're rolling now, but I've been very excited about this,
Yeah, you've been pretty busy, huh?
Yeah, trying to do this the right way. But regenerative agriculture came onto my radar maybe a year and a half ago or so. I'm not sure if you've heard of White Oak Pastures, but there's a gentleman who runs that. It's a multi-generational cattle farm out of Georgia, and it used to be a big commercial operation. They have since turned it into a regenerative farm just through research and him developing as a human being and coming to find his own path in life. And he started making the rounds and doing some big podcasts, and I found out about what he was doing and what they've been able to accomplish. And so when I found what you're doing with your company, I was dying to get you on here and really pick your brain on all of this. So do you want to tell people a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, I design and install regenerative, self-sustaining, low-maintenance, edible landscapes or food forests. And what I am trying to do is install food forests everywhere and start solving some of the world's biggest problems, with our food system. Try to get people healthy again, start eating locally produced food that is not grown with pesticides or herbicides or poisons. And like the food you get at the grocery stores, it's all full of chemical sprays, and it's not the healthiest, and there's not a lot of nutritional value in that food when you get it home from the store. So,
well, and most people don't realize that. The couple things you touched on there, the nutrient density being very low. These aren't, that's with the way that they treat a lot of this produce. It can be months before the time that it is harvested and the time that it actually hits the shelves on the store. Also, these pesticides and the herbicides that you're talking about. I've known of these issues for a while now. I'm pretty big into health. I'm a healthy dude. I take good care of myself, but I was doing some research into exact numbers on some of this stuff, especially you hear glyphosate being thrown around.
Exactly.
Especially, Monsanto has faced a just incredible amount of lawsuits in glyphosate, which is the key ingredient in Roundup, or used to be the key ingredient in consumer-facing Roundup, causing cancers. But what people don't realize is even though they have made the move to pull that out of the consumer side of that product, that herbicide, it is a synthetic herbicide that they created, is still sprayed on the vast majority of American crops that are grown on these big monocrop agriculture plots. And to the extent, I can't remember who had conducted this study, but it was within the past couple of years, they found glyphosate in over 80% of people or over 80% of urine samples tested in American adults and children. We know that's a huge issue. And also on top of all of those facts aside, these plants, these GMO plants, this herbicide is so prevalent that Roundup ready plants. That is an actual category of genetically
Mhm.
modified plants because it is such a nasty chemical and they just it's such pervasive use that they've built the plants that we put into our bodies to be able to withstand these chemicals, but then we wind up eating that.
Yeah, another thing too, the company Bayer, it's Bayer Monsanto. Well, Bayer, that's big pharma, so Monsanto gets you sick and Bayer helps you get better, right? You know,
I didn't even, yeah, the revolving door there.
the hamster wheel, exactly, right? They get you sick and then you get stuck in the revolving wheel of big pharma, So
Yeah, it really is. I'm 29 now. I would say I got out of the Marines when I was 22. It's probably 24 or 25 when I really started realizing how corrupt a lot of these systems are. And even in looking up some of this research, when you go on like the CDC website or they'll say, "Oh, well, there's no proof that glyphosate causes cancer." And okay, what about all these lawsuits that point to it? And so it's kind of crazy how much money greases the wheels, especially I mean, we are American, so I see it in the American system. Obviously, that's everywhere. And that's with all of that in mind, that really piqued my interest. And that's something I really want to dig into this stuff a little more with you today, too. But for you, it was that knowledge what drove you to getting involved in this? Because I know you were in the Marine Corps. I don't know what you did in between the Marine Corps because I know you're a Desert Storm vet, but what you do between then and how does that lead you to where you are now?
well, since 1998, I've actually been a web developer, web designer, graphic designer, online marketer, SEO expert, and but I've always been interested in growing food. When I was a kid, I'd go around the neighborhood, ride my bike. I have a twin brother, so I had someone to hang out with every day. And all our friends, we'd ride around our neighborhood on bikes. Everybody had food growing in their yards. So you could actually go have lunch, apples, pears, peaches, whatever. And after after that, you started to see less and less of that because people started getting convinced that it's more convenient to get your local produce at the grocery store, right?
Yeah. And
And
how old are you?
I am going to be 54 in 2 days,
Okay.
but I look
Happy early birthday.
34.
Yeah, dude,
Thank
you
you.
look fantastic. It's but so yeah, I mean that's not even that long ago. So you've had that growing up and now
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
but
and I've always been interested in that. So when my mom had a garden, I would plant my own things in her garden so I could watch them grow. And and then, after the Marine Corps in 2014, I happened to see a prototype drawing of a greenhouse. And it was a greenhouse that it was 100% off-grid greenhouse. Okay. So we're talking, it would go in your suburban backyard, everybody's backyard. And had solar panels, it had water catchment on it. So you had 250-gallon water catchment tanks on it and aquaponics. So one had fish in it. So we're using fish to grow food. And one had potable water. There's a chicken tractor on it. There's a biodigester to make cooking fuel. And there was a thermo dehydrator. So you could dehydrate your extra food to preserve it. And this thing was just badass, right? And it was just caught my attention right away. And I'm like, everybody needs to have one of these in their backyard. And so I contacted, it was a friend of mine who had this prototype. And him and we met each other in high school through wrestling. So we knew each other for a long time. So I'm like, hey, Jim, how do I get involved in this? And we start talking. And I just happened to be going down to Florida for another company I was involved in for a week. and he's down in Orlando, Florida. He goes, well, we have a prototype being built right now. So why don't you come down and see it? So I flew down to Orlando for the other company I was involved in, and then took one day. I went a day early, actually, and then went to Jim's place, and then we drove to a farm where this prototype was being built. So I actually got to see it. And this thing is just incredible.
It sounds
And
like it. Yeah.
yeah. And so we were trying to bring it to market, but we couldn't find anywhere where you could get it made and manufactured cheap. It was cost like 25,000 to create one of these. So once you add all your overhead, your margins on it to try to make money on a thing, it's overpriced, and it priced pretty much everybody, your average homeowner, out of it. So had to, put it on the back burner and start over. And we came up with a few other different models, and even tried to go with the franchise model to try to get it to market. But that became pain in the rear, because franchises, it takes a 350-page document, just to get someone aboard.
Well, and you'd probably need a whole legal team even just to manage
Yeah.
people coming on. That would constantly be someone that you're having to staff.
Yeah. And then all the money you had to put in just to get the franchise created. And so it just that wasn't working. And, but we kept trying. So that was 2014, 2015, 2016. And then the other newer models were all the way up until 2018 and 2019. Well, then COVID happened. And my friend was down in Florida. He had a small kiosk in a mall, in one of the shopping malls. And the malls closed down when the whole United States shut down for COVID for
And this is
2 weeks.
Jim had this
Jim,
kiosk. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And so he was out of business. So he called me up, and since I have the web development background, web design background, and he didn't, so we partnered up, and we got to do something. And then came up with a company called Food Forest Abundance, and growing food. And we met a guy named Ian Scott, who was a chiropractor, but he was also involved he was growing food in his backyard, learning how to design food forests and everything like that. So, like, we need to grow food in every yard across the United States, right? We need to replace ornamental trees with food producing trees. And, we were just looking at landscapes and how dead they are. There's no life in these landscapes because they're heavily poisoned with your weed killers, fertilizers. And so we came up with a business model of transforming lawns into food forests and edible landscapes. And so we started that in 2020. And then I'm still involved in that company somewhat, but I no longer, I'm doing my own thing now. I'm still a owner in that company, but I'm in Minnesota. That's down in Florida, so it's kind of hard to run a business in Florida when I'm not there. So
Yeah, little bit of a barrier there,
yeah,
but that's
and so basically, I started from scratch up here and built my business and learned how to become a permaculture designer, and I did some installations down in Florida,
well. And
wood forest. Yeah, go ahead.
before we move forward, can you not literally define, but lay some groundwork for what permaculture means? Because I hadn't heard that term
Oh,
either until I was on your website, and then I researched it. But people at home probably aren't going to know what that means.
yeah, permanent culture. Permaculture is permanent culture. It's a design science. So like, you're working with nature, not against nature. You can get more technical in it and involved in it, but it's all about working with nature
Okay.
and, designing the way nature intends, not the way, you are. For just as an example, when you put an apple tree in the ground or any fruit tree, we also want to plant additional supporting varieties of plants and berry bushes and insect attractors, ground covers, pest deterrents, but you plant everything in a guild, which is a community of plants that help support the fruit tree, and then they also support each other. So they all have their different jobs they do together.
That's really
So
neat. Are these enclosed, these guilds, or is that what you like the terminology for a unit of plants essentially?
yeah, it's just a terminology. It's wide open, and similar to if you're driving down the street or down the highway, freeway, you see these wooded areas on the side of the road or side of freeway. Well, if you actually stop and look at them, they're not just all the trees are not the same size and they're not all the same. There's a bunch of different varieties of all different sizes from the top of the canopy down to the ground. And they're all supporting each other. Okay. And nobody has to
Yeah,
maintain that. Nature maintains that.
that is so
So,
interesting.
yeah. So when we design a food forest in your yard, we're designing it to be as low maintenance as possible. So all you got to do is go in your backyard and, pick all your fruit and your vegetables. And there's a difference between one thing, a lot of people think it's very hard to grow food and or a lot of work. And you have an annual garden and you have perennial, or annuals and perennials. An annual is like your normal backyard garden with your tomatoes and your peppers and cucumbers and all those types of things that you plant in the spring and then you harvest in the fall and then you have to wait till next spring again, right? A perennial is a tree or a bush or a plant that you plant one time and it continues to come back year after year. And I'm in Minnesota, so obviously we have the winter. So in the
You have
fall,
a hell of a winter, is what you have. You don't just have a winter. That's brutal.
yeah, but hey, the last couple of years have been pretty mild. And just like
Okay.
now, it was 40 degrees today.
Yeah.
So that's warm. That's like shorts weather, in
Yeah.
Minnesota. And it was 50 the other day. So, in January. So
Yeah.
it was pretty nice. So, but, your perennials, in Minnesota, you have your growing season till like November. You start getting the cold weather and frost. So all the leaves will drop their trees, or trees will drop their leaves, sorry. And then they'll go to sleep, they'll go dormant until springtime, and then they wake up again. So, and that's pretty much with any type of food forest, they all have their cycle, their, seasonal cycles. Um, so perennials come back year after year. Annuals are work. You have to keep planting them every year and then keep an eye on them because things can go wrong with annual gardens if you don't pay attention to them. You get your weeds, you got pests, stuff like that,
Yeah.
um, and your perennial food forests. You're pretty much you have a little bit of maintenance for the first few years and pruning your trees. And but once they get established, start maturing, it's pretty much hands off. And
Wow.
year after year, your trees grow and they produce more and more. And and they come back.
Well, so I noticed on your website, I mean, I know you mentioned, I think it says something to the effect of, from front yards to farmlands, and
Yo.
it seems like everything in between. You're trying to work in, communal spaces and potentially
Yes.
on universities and things like that. How, in the couple of years you've been in business now, how have you start to see that carry over into these larger projects?
I've been involved in some of those, done some schools. And down in Florida, we designed some food forests for the Florida Bureau of Prisons. So, you know, basically putting a food forest on the prison grounds because they have all that land around the prison.
Yeah.
So, and then you're giving the inmates something, you're giving them an education on how to grow food, how to be self-sufficient. And so they have something to do. And, when you get your hands in the dirt and when you're out there working in the soil, it's great for your mental health, you
Yeah, and
know?
they're contributing to something.
Yeah,
And that's something I think we forget about too is that the yes, prison is a punishment, but it is also meant to get these people eventually rehabilitate them and get them back into society as productive members
exactly.
of society. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, and once they have a skill, and that's a great skill to have because once you get out of there, you can teach other people how to grow food and you can do what I'm doing. And the recidivism rate of someone who has a skill like that is under 10% versus a lot of others. If they don't learn a skill, it's a revolving door. They're going to keep going back.
Yeah, they're going to fall back on whatever got them in there because that's how they were making a living.
And then they got good food in the prison, because they're serving them crap food because they're prisoners. But if they have all this nutrient dense food growing right outside the prison, that can help feed them also. And on the other side of the coin, schools, if you put food forests on the grounds of every school and we start getting that education back in the schools and teaching children how to grow food, they also get to work and take care of a food forest. They're learning a skill, they're learning how to be self sufficient, and then they can go home and design their own yard, their own parents' yard, and go out in their neighborhoods and help design food forests.
And I hadn't even thought of that when I saw that on your website, but that makes so much sense. And I'm glad you brought up both prisons and schools because I really want to get some people on here to talk about prison and education reform. These to some extent, prisons more so than schools, the more privately owned things start to come in, and I think we get away from the real purpose of what's going on. But these really do seem like healthy and sustainable, and also these aren't revolving doors of cost where it's going to be a money sink for these institutions year after year after year. Like this is a genuine, more upfront thing that will continue to pay dividends into the future. I love that.
And one thing, you're not paying for labor. They're in prison,
Key,
right?
yeah, the
There's no
kids,
overhead costs, right? And the
yeah.
kids too, they're actually going to school and they're learning. But there's also retirement homes. You give old folks something to do, with gardens and stuff, and help them keep them mentally sharp.
Well, and even at hospitals and stuff, man, I
Yeah,
spent a lot of time in the hospital after I shot myself, getting out of the room just for anything other than more appointments was huge, even if it was for someone to wheel me around in a wheelchair to take me outside for 5 minutes, or even so the VA actually has blind rehab centers around the country where I went to school after I was out of the hospital to learn how to be blind. And at one of the places that I've been to, they had a garden there. And even, they can teach you that stuff. And that would, again, something more places where these are great things to to get people out and be having positive experiences at horrible times. But that is, again, it is a net positive. It's not just a
yes.
money hole for things.
Yeah, and there's other things you can do too. You got commercial properties, but every city, every town across the United States has a city hall. They got a police department. They got a library. They have parks, city parks. They're just all green grass being underused or underutilized. So if you can plant food forests on all your public lands, you can solve food security all the way across this country. Nobody will go hungry. because food will be growing everywhere.
Well, and we saw the supply chain disruptions during
Yeah.
COVID, and we know, I think that highlighted other issues that we have in the surrounding the fact that we've outsourced production and gotten away of so many goods in the United States, but also lost the ability to do this stuff at home that people, 70 years ago were doing in their homes. And I do think this is a would be an incredible step in the right direction.
And it's already been proven back in World War One and World War II, our government actually encouraged homeowners to plant victory gardens in their yards to support the war effort. And for years, there was, I don't know the exact number, but we're talking millions and millions of tons of locally grown food, and after the wars were over, then they're like, they got all the food in the convenience stores or the grocery
Yeah.
stores and convince people that you don't have to grow food anymore. You can just go get it down at your grocery store.
Well, and that leads to Americans getting hooked on these highly processed foods, which are why we
Yes.
see more than half the people when you walk around outside are obese. And
Oh boy.
so something crazy that I heard recently, I would say within the past couple months, another podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Being blind, I'm always listening to something if I'm not working. And so I believe it was as the truth kind of started coming out around cigarettes, where okay, we're done being able to tell people that hey, smoking will cure your pneumonia or whatever you have going on. And these tobacco companies started seeing, okay, we have to shift efforts here to continue making these profits. And they started buying into buying up and starting these food companies that now produce these highly processed foods. And they're having
Hmm.
these same scientists that were engineering tobacco and cigarettes to be more addictive. They
Yeah,
applied that to
exactly.
food. And that has gotten us through to where between that and money greasing the wheels of the FDA and all these other things has gotten us to where we are today in such a short time.
And you see one person right now that is trying to bring attention to that and trying to change that, which is
RFK.
RFK Jr.
Yep.
And I watched his confirmation hearings last week, and it was amazing to see how many people were trying to call him crazy and a conspiracy theorist instead of why is it a problem that someone will want to get the poisons out of our food, because it is a problem. You cannot say it's a normal occurrence for everybody to be sick. It's
Well, and
because of what's there,
you go ahead.
10,000 different ingredients in foods in the United States, and that weren't there 100 years ago. And overseas in other countries, there's only 400 ingredients.
Yeah. Well, and we've seen, especially I think it's been highlighted in the past several years, and money will try and discredit people like that. That
Yeah.
is,
Oh, yes.
they will get back behind that and even get, basically these synthetic voices pushing behind this to push this
Yeah.
narrative. And,
And
the truth it'll prove itself.
eventually, yeah. And
Yeah.
then you look at these companies are making one version of their like breakfast cereals, Fruit Loops, and some of the other ones. They're making one version for the United States is full of all these different dyes that are no good for you, that have been proven to cause cancer, and then they make another healthier version for Canada, for all these other countries, because they won't allow it in their country. So if they want to be able to sell it, they got to change it.
Well, yeah, they know that these are carcinogens, and so they've
Yeah.
outlawed them. These are ingredients that are illegal in other first world countries. But again,
And
it's
that makes you think, like, how do they not treat your own people as well as you do people in other countries?
it's
I
money.
mean, it
It's
is money, but it's just amazing that they willingly do it, knowing the food that they're giving the American consumer is garbage,
yeah.
but it is all
And
money.
yeah, and a lot of it is also in terms of there not being so much pushback as there's a lack of education on this stuff. And even if you look at the food pyramid that the US puts out, it is bullshit. It's
Yeah, right, it
based
is.
the base of the pyramid is grains, which you don't need. And but it's because that's what's produced here. And even those are sprayed. I just recently found out all grains produced in the United States that are not organic are legally have to be sprayed with folic acid, and 44% of the population has a
Deficiency in their guts
well,
from
it's a gene, it's a
yeah, the
gene
G
mutation,
yes.
MTFR, and
Hmm.
it makes it so that 44% of people cannot process that folic acid
Yes.
into the methylfolate that we actually need. And so, yeah, like you said, it causes gut issues, it presents as allergies and all these crazy other things in people. And again, what's greasing that is because the American agricultural economy is based around these grains. And I'm really curious to see what happens here over the next couple of years. And I didn't mean to go down a political
Oh
rabbit hole
no,
on that,
it's
which
totally, but they make it that way. You gotta, it's you get to watch our political system at work
well,
because
and
they're not about us.
food shouldn't be political.
No, not at all,
So,
not at all.
but
And it's sad.
yeah, it really is. But and so with that, I mean, you have Minnesota in the name of your company, but I know it says that you'll design stuff for people out of state and out of your
Yes.
local
Yeah.
area. Do you have plans to expand? Are you trying to stay local like that?
I'm glad you just brought that up because I am actually right now in the next couple weeks launching the Food Forest Design Network,
There we go.
which which is going to be nationwide and Canada. And, if I get people from overseas, we'll be
Really?
overseas too,
Okay.
because that way I can design anywhere. If I have access to a lot of since I launched this company, I have met designers and have worked with designers all over the country. And a lot of my mentors are out of state, and I have a few here in state in Minnesota that are, been designing permaculture landscapes and properties for 10, 20 years. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot from them. And then a guy in Michigan that he's one of my mentors. I work with him on things, and a woman named Lindsay Brandon. She's a head of Permaculture Canada. So I am building or getting designers to join my network from all around the country so I can design in all climates. But I can also design virtually through a Zoom
Yeah.
call like we're on now. Um, but now on the other side of that, we're going to people become network installation teams for me
So
for
are
the
you
network.
franchising this? How's all
It's
that working?
um, they will pay to be part of the network. We will handle all of the advertising and the marketing and the sales. So,
Okay.
their network fees that they pay us to represent our brand, the Food Forest Design Network, is going to go towards a social media and Facebook and internet marketing campaigns in their area, so we can
Okay.
get designs in their area, and then they can perform all the installations.
Yeah.
And
So
then
similar to a franchise in that they're
yeah,
buying into the brand.
yeah, and then
Okay.
I have, since I started this business from the ground up, I have built a training program to take someone like me who has never been involved in permaculture before or this type of business, and take them from registering their business,
What is
and
that course called?
it's going to be part of this network. The
Okay.
training. I'm going to be able to train, because I'm going after landscape companies that are, diversify their offerings and become installation. Some are just cutting grass and weed whacking, right? So, they might want to try something different, and they can make more money doing installations than they can cutting grass,
Yeah.
and you can actually do something that feels good, when you plant trees and you put this food forest in someone's property and then you don't actually walk away from it, but you have an accomplishment, man, and then you can have the maintenance on top of that and help the homeowner or whoever you're putting that these food forests on their property for, you can help them maintain that. But my training program is to show them how to start that business up, and I have access to all these designers that will be able to teach them. And it's going to be a great company. And,
Well, and especially
permaculture.
you go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
No, it's everybody that I have been involved with in this company and all the designers and installers I meet have the same goal. And that is food forests everywhere. They see what we're talking about. They see it, you know, what can happen if we grow food everywhere and all the
Like,
problems that we can solve.
yeah, because it's a concrete idea. There's no hand wavy bullshit behind it. It gets, yeah, someone's gonna make some money off of it, but that is a noble cause to get behind. And I think that sounds like it's gonna work out perfectly with you having a web design background and web development background for you to be able to build that out. I don't know, man. I'm
Mhm.
very, very excited for you and very excited to see where this goes.
It's going to be fun, and actually, I hooked up with another Marine in Massachusetts, and I'm launching. He's going to be more the sales side, for the network. And he's amazing at sales. He was in the solar business for I don't know 10 or 15 years, so he's got have a really great sales background, and he's also involved in permaculture out in Massachusetts. So
That's
I kind
awesome.
of, and I met him through a podcast.
Really?
So yeah, so it's all like attracts like, you know, and
Yeah.
the law of attraction, I guess you could call it, and like-minded people, and we all have the same goals, and
Yeah.
so
And do you have a projected timeline on the network? Is there anything concrete behind that yet that you want to
we're going to
announce?
be pre-launching. I'm actually tonight. I will be finishing up one of the funnel pages for the designs for sale or consultations for uh, design blueprints or designing
Okay.
properties, and then that after I get that finished, then I'm going to start working on the uh, the sales funnel and the funnel for members that are going to sign up to be part of the network, to be installation teams all over the country. And
That is so cool.
then I've the last week I've been putting together the training program, and I've had it, but I had to put it in black and white. You know, it's
Yeah.
because it's getting to be a system that I can hand off, and eventually, though, once the network's started and all that, I will actually sell that as a separate digital product. How to start and run your own design and installation business. So they'll be able
Yeah.
to just take it and be a video course along with PDF files to back everything up, and yeah, they'll be able to just take it and run with it.
Got a lot of irons in the fire, man.
Yeah, it's the way it's been. I've been my own building websites for so long, and I've done everything. And
I
just like
love
this
that.
business, I do everything. I do the sales, I do the marketing, I do my own YouTube channel, my videos, I do all the editing. And like I built this business from the ground up, and I do the install work and, invoicing, estimates, everything. And yeah, so hopefully soon I have an investor that can take the load off of me, and I'll be able to expand my admin team to start, doing the heavy lifting for me so I can concentrate on being the face of the company and growing.
Yeah, and keep spreading the word.
Hmm.
I want to pick your brain so bad. I'm also a software developer. I want to pick your brain on this stuff, but I don't want to bore other people with it. So, because
And we could talk off this, all you
yeah,
want.
yeah, awesome. Well, where do you want people to go to find you? This is what today is, I think February 2nd. It's the first of,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So this will come out, I believe, on March 31st. So you've got some
Okay.
time here in between.
Oh yeah. So, but if they want to find me in Minnesota, if they happen to be in Minnesota, but just find me foodforestdesignminnesota.com. And then the network is going to be called the Food Forest Design Network.com. And I already have that domain name and building a website on it right now. And by March 31st, I'm hoping to have 50 install teams already, or maybe 100.
Okay. There we go. So by the time
So
people hear this, you'll be off to the races.
yeah, I'm hoping so.
Okay. Awesome. And
It's,
I will have links to those in the show notes for people to find and click on instead of having to type them in.
yeah, and also Food Forest Design Minnesota on YouTube. I have like 380 videos on there. So,
Jesus, dude, that's a lot.
and, whenever I go to a job, when I go to a client's home, I film the entire process from before and after, and then everything in between, and kind of educate my, watchers, my followers as I do the installation. And,
Okay.
and this spring, I'm hoping to have a drone so I can do some overhead shots and have the drone hover above me while I work.
Yeah, get your plumber's crack from an
Yeah,
aerial view.
exactly, right.
That'd be pretty sweet, man. Yeah. I get when you're designing these things, what are you designing it in? Are you
I
doing it on paper?
No, no, I don't do it. I do actually use what's the name of that software? I use a lot of Illustrator and Photoshop.
Okay.
And there's another software I was using, but I'm so comfortable with Photoshop because I've been using it for years and years that I created all my own icons from
Mm,
I ripped as many icons out as possible from another software of different types of trees and all the things that go into your designs, and plus created all my own icons. So when I designed a property, I had apple trees, peach trees, pear trees, everything. So you actually see a blueprint when I'm finished.
that's
And
interesting. Do you have any videos of that up of like time lapses of you designing these things?
no, I don't have that,
Okay.
but I have just the actual installation. And
That's
right
cool.
now I'm trying to add AI to the design process that can handle some of the things that take me a long time to do without removing the human interaction or human intelligence, or in my
Yeah.
imagination.
Well, and
Um,
that's the power behind all these tools is it increases productivity because you can it frees the intent as they get better and better is to free
yeah,
people up to do this stuff, these
and
less menial
there's
things.
a lot of things that go into a design on the property because you're in different parts of the country, so you have different weather, different climates, and then the sun is different. And some people might have a lot of trees in their backyard, so they don't get as much sun as another property. So you got to determine how much sun they're getting so we can plant stuff, accordingly. Some things need full sun all day, some don't. Some can thrive in shade.
Yeah.
And then you also have different types of soil, and you have the wind patterns. And, like up here in Minnesota, we have a shorter growing season. It gets cold. And so it's just many, many things. And if there's water coming in the property when it rains, you kind of want to watch the landscape to see what happens,
Yeah.
because if their property floods when it rains, you want to be able to keep that water in the landscape, but direct it somewhere else and keep it in there to help feed your food forest. Because water is energy, just like sun is energy, wind is energy. Um, so you're trying to take all these different factors in your design, and you know, so it's like I said, it's a design science, and it's
Yeah,
just not.
it sounds like
Yeah,
an art, man. It
it is, and I'm not. I'm a rookie. I've only been doing it for a few years, and I'm still learning. And like some of the mentors I learned from have been doing it one in 15 years, and another one's been doing it for about the same, almost 20 years. So I lean on them. If people have water problems in their property, I lean on them and say, how should I direct the water on this property? And should you use swales? I don't know if you're familiar with a swale is,
I have
but
no idea what that is.
it's kind of like a ditch, you know, but it's gonna direct the water where you need it to go. But you can
Okay.
also plant flowers and trees and plants and everything in your swales. Um, so you're just it's all about energy, capturing energy,
And
directing energy,
contouring
and
the land and
contour. And
mm,
swales can go on the contour of the land. And there's so many different factors. So it's every property is different.
yeah, it seems. And what's cool about stuff like that is when you're working on it, every job is different. And so
Wood.
you're not becoming a zombie as you're doing this work. It's active and engaging. And I'm very excited for you, man. I don't know. I feel like I could pick your brain on this stuff endlessly. I'm curious about it all. I'm curious how it all works. And I appreciate you taking the time to let me pick your brain on some of this stuff.
Oh
Like,
yeah, for sure. I could talk about it all day too. It's
yeah. Well, tell everyone one more time your two websites that they should go check out that I will have links to in the show notes.
all right. Food Forest Design Minnesota.com and the network is Food Forest Design Network. .com. So if anyone is interested in starting their own installation business, they're interested, they can, you know, give me a call, go to my website and check it out, and learn everything and become part of it. Um, and then YouTube channel is Food Forest Design Minnesota. Same thing on Facebook, Instagram, and yeah, those are where you can find me.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Semper Fi.
It's Ember Fi. And everyone at home, thanks for listening to another episode of Going In Blind.
Hoorah.